The very first AP Top 25 poll has been released. Did they get it right, placing our beloved Big Ten teams where they did? And of the Big Ten teams that aren't ranked to start the season, which ones could crack the top 25 in the first half of the year?
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
When the AP poll gets released, you know college football is right around the corner. Huskers and Gophers will be strapping it up and playing in Minneapolis before you know it, ladies and gentlemen, August 31st on Fox. Okay, sometimes there can be, from a Big Ten perspective, there can be quite a bit to complain about when you talk about the way the AP ranks teams sometimes, but to start this season, to start 2023, I don't think there's a ton to complain about in terms of the AP poll as it relates to Big Ten teams. There are 5 teams from the B1G that end up being ranked to start the season. Let's take a look at the AP poll and what it looks like. This image courtesy of the On3 Twitter account. Of course, 2 out of the 3 top teams in the top 3 from the Big Ten Conference. Of course, Michigan, everything that they bring back this season, they are a true national championship contender. A lot of those guys, including Jim Harbaugh, running it back for one more year. They've left a lot on the table the last couple of years. They are number 2 for good reason. Ohio State there at number 3. Questions maybe at quarterback, offensive line, secondary. But if you kind of take those position groups out of the equation, this is a team with elite talent in the country. I'm so glad they did put Ohio State at number 3. I think they could have easily put Alabama, maybe even an LSU, because actually I think LSU is actually better than Alabama here right now. So I'm glad that they put Ohio State where they did because there is elite talent on that roster. You look at Penn State at number 7. I can't really complain too much about that with the teams that are in front of them. I know LSU is really good. USC, future Big Ten team. I'll talk about that here in just a minute. And you kind of look at who's in front of them. Alabama and LSU, that's going to play itself out. Penn State will match up against Michigan and Ohio State. Like, they're going to have their opportunity to get into the top 4. Things are going to play out in front of them how they may. USC takes on a tough Pac-12 schedule this season. So I can't complain too much about Penn State. They have to go out there and prove it against the Michigans, against the Ohio States. That's going to be their big obstacle this season. If they want to get into that top 4 at the end of the year, they're going to have to beat one of those 2 that start the season ranked in the top 4. So I can't complain about Penn State too much there at number 7. You look at the 2 Big Ten West teams. Wisconsin, this was a 6-6 team a year ago. So considering how much change and turnover they went through to be ranked in the top 20 at number 19, I don't think you can complain too much about that. Could they be ranked above Oregon State, above TCU? Yeah, maybe, but considering how they finished last year, I think sliding in at number 19 is just fine for the Badgers. And then, of course, you look at the Iowa Hawkeyes at number 25, kind of the same boat. A lot of changes. It was a 7-5 team in the regular season. Of course, 8-5 with that win in the bowl game over Kentucky. Of course, new quarterback, a little bit of uncertainty at offensive line, even though I think it's going to be better. How is this offense going to look? Just how many steps up are they going to take? And then they lose Jack Campbell and Seth Benson at linebacker. How about Riley Moss? In the secondary, Lucas Van Ness on the defensive line. I think, and I know that this Iowa defense is going to be really good. Just how good are they going to be compared to the last couple of seasons when you lose guys like a Campbell, like a Riley Moss that I mentioned in that group as well? Last thing I kind of want to mention about this AP poll as well, look at the future of the Big Ten. How about 3 of the 4 West Coast ads coming in 2024 are ranked in the top 15. USC at 6, Washington at 10, and Oregon at number 15. Now, those 3 teams have things in common. Caleb Williams, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, all aren't going to be back next season, I believe. So, so they're going to be going through a quarterback transition. But for this season, those all look to be pretty good football teams. UCLA actually just outside of the top 25. So the Big Ten has definitely added strength to their conference starting in 2024. All right, I want to talk about something here of teams that are outside of the top 25 that could maybe crack it. Before I get into that, I want to really talk about Wisconsin a little bit more. their schedule is favorable early on. Their toughest games in their first 5 at Washington State, got to get that revenge, and a Friday night game at Purdue. This is a Wisconsin team that could easily start this season 5-0 going into that big matchup at Camp Randall against the Iowa Hawkeyes. So this is a team that could maybe push their way into the top 15, maybe even towards the top 10 and make that Iowa game that much more juicy with that type of ranking. So we'll see if Wisconsin can do that. I think there's still some uncertainties of how good the Badgers can be early in that season. Remember, they lost to Washington State last season. Although they've owned Purdue, Ross-Ade on a Friday night early in the season maybe could be a little bit tricky there for the Wisconsin Badgers. All right, let's get into teams that aren't ranked that could be ranked in the first half of the season. I want to start off with the Maryland Terrapins. All right. First thing I want to mention, these teams received votes and Maryland didn't. South Alabama, Troy, James Madison, just to name a few. This is a Maryland team that's been fairly consistent the last couple of years, 7-8 win type of seasons for Mike Loxley and the Terps. So to not get any votes at all seems a little bit odd to me. Okay, maybe I can complain about something here in this AP poll. But in order to be ranked, the path to being ranked is winning the first 5 games for the Maryland Terrapins. You need to steamroll. You need to put out the third stringers and the fourth stringers late third quarter, fourth quarter. That's what kind of games Towson, Charlotte, and Virginia need to be. Virginia is probably going to be at the bottom of the barrel in terms of Power 5 teams this year. So you need to put up a lot of points. You need to look very impressive in those games. And then you take a look at Michigan State. That's going to be a little bit tricky away from home. You look at Indiana. You got to steamroll 4 of those teams. You got to steamroll Indiana as well, and you got to find a way to beat Michigan State. That's your 5-0. And you're going to maybe need a little bit of help in front of you, but you need to look impressive doing so. You need to make it look like these teams don't belong on the same field with the Terps. That's the way Maryland needs to play going into that Ohio State game, and that could be a ranked matchup. Maryland building some momentum, but that would likely be their first big-time test of the season there if Michigan State is not that already. All right, let's get into Minnesota. All right, all we hear about Minnesota now, how difficult their schedule is. That's all we're hearing right now headed into the 2023 season. Now, this is a Minnesota team that has a fighting chance, that has a little bit of respect on their name, to the contrary of what I just talked about with Maryland. They received 6 votes, so they're in the also receiving votes category of the AP Top 25. Now, here's the thing. They do have a tough schedule, but a lot of their tougher games kind of come in the back half, the second half of the season, okay? I think they're going to beat Nebraska to start this season, okay? Nebraska, of course, comes into Minneapolis, so they win that one. Their most challenging effort to get to 5-0 is a road game against a probably top 20 North Carolina team at the time. If they're able to go into Chapel Hill, play bully ball, PJ keeps the ball out of the hands of Drake May, and they find a way to win against North Carolina, this could be a 5-0 team, because the other games in their schedule are Eastern Michigan, Louisiana, and Northwestern. Despite their tough schedule, the Gophers could still be 5-0, and I think that is a path, especially considering that 5-0 path would include a win over a top 20 North Carolina team with a Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback. I think that would really bring a lot of attention. It would open the eyes, I think, of a lot of AP voters at that time if they're able to win that game at North Carolina. And 5-0 going into the Little Brown Jug game against Minnesota could add some intrigue to that one as well. I want to throw something out with Illinois as well. Illinois also received some votes in there as well, but they play Penn State early on the road, and then, their schedule it's not overly difficult, but there are some games in there that could maybe sneak up on them. I could maybe see the Illini getting ranked a little bit later in the season, because when you look at the marquee games where Illinois can maybe beat a ranked team, you look at Wisconsin kind of in the middle of the season. They don't play Iowa until the second to last game before their rivalry game against Northwestern. So maybe they won't have a ton of opportunities against ranked teams. That's something that could maybe hold Illinois back even though I believe the Illini can be a team that could go 7-5 or 8-4 or maybe even 9-3, something like that, I just think maybe the lack of ranked opponents on their schedule could maybe hold the Illini back from being into that top 25 category, especially earlier on in the season. What do you guys think? Who do you think could be ranked? Did the AP get it right? I want to know your thoughts. Leave them below. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.